Support for This News is So Gay comes from the LGBTQ Plus Opportunity Fund of the Cleveland Foundation, leveraging philanthropy to empower LGBTQ plus communities. Welcome to This News is So Gay. I'm your host, Ken Schneck, editor of The Buckeye Flame, Ohio's LGBTQ plus newsroom. Thanks so much for joining us. Here's what we're covering on this week's all-new episode. We are always looking for safe spaces, but what major LGBTQ plus drama is going down these days in coffee shops, in libraries, and yes, even in gay bars? Ohio has once again passed a 24-hour waiting period for abortion care. Why does that matter to the LGBTQ plus community? We're going to find out. There are some people, places, and things that you might not know, but you soon will in our latest round of Who the Heck Is That? And of course, queer joy. Where is our roundtable finding queer joy in the news right now? Joining us this week to answer those questions and so many more, managing editor and training director for Investigative Reporters and Editors, a grassroots nonprofit organization dedicated to improving the quality of investigative reporting, Adam Martin Rhodes. Adam, welcome back to the show.
Not the full government, never should have never told you that.
The general rule that people usually evidence is, I never should have told Ken that. It's great to have you here, Adam. And reporter for the Ohio Capital Journal, Susan Tebben. Susan, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. I'm glad I have a simple title that everyone can get right.
Susan, breaking news. We hung out last week.
Yeah, I've seen him in person. He's more than just a torso.
Susan gave me a tour of the Ohio State House. I remember none of what was taught to me except that it's a little bit of a maze, and I am excited. In full transparency, everyone, the third member of this trio that I cannot separate is Lauren Chapman. And Lauren Chapman, very exciting news, has already and unsurprisingly, gotten a promotion. Lauren is now the Sacramento Bee's California politics editor, and it is her first day today.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, it's so incredible, and she can't make it today, but we do this in her spirit, and I'm not, worried about Adam and Susan, but we miss you, Lauren. No sports ball questions for this group. Although I think Susan can pull off some of them. Our LGBTQ plus reporters roundtable is now assembled. So let's dive in. Let's start where we've been starting. How are queer journalists doing? Adam, how are you doing?
Oh, I am hanging in there. I have a couple big projects that I'm just starting. I have one article that is about to come out that I'm really excited for. And my dog just turned 10. So, celebrating a lot of things.
Love it. Susan, how fares you?
I fares good. I have a 15-year-old cat, so I understand. Otherwise, yeah, doing well.
We're doing the thing. Well, I want to start off by talking about safe spaces, because as the political attacks on the LGBTQ plus community keep escalating, we're always looking for places where we know we can find refuge. And so one story that we're not going to talk about, because Lauren was going to talk about it, but I'll just mention a lot of drama with rainbow flags in coffee shops in California. And it looks like that's been resolved. So that's a good thing. But Susan, another one of my favorite safe places is my local library. And here in Ohio, there has been major LGBTQ plus drama in our libraries as Republicans passed a measure that would have moved LGBTQ plus related books out of view of minors. But then Governor DeWine vetoed that bill. It was in the budget, which we can do a whole nother episode on how annoyed I get when qualitative culture-based items are put into the Ohio budget, but we'll do that another day. But as it turns out, as you reported, Susan, our Ohio libraries among the most used in the country.
Oh, yeah, yeah. So there was some data done by USA Facts that just showed, the circulation numbers and the usage and the amount of library cards that are given per person in every state. And Ohio came out on top on most of those, top in the circulation and in the top 3 for the library cards. So yeah, Ohio is using their libraries quite a lot and for quite a lot of things.
That almost makes me more worried that that could become a Republican talking point of, look, we need to take action because how used our libraries are.
It could, and Libraries are such a mixed bag, and I hesitate to even say mixed bag because you have a lot of Republicans, obviously, on all sides saying how much they support the libraries, how much they think libraries are very important, especially for low-income communities, for rural communities, for, any kind of community that may not just be able to buy any books that they want or get broadband access anytime they want, things like that. So you have a lot of people saying and legislators saying, yes, we support the libraries, but then you also have bills like you're talking about, like legislation like you're talking about, that did eventually get vetoed, but were brought up in the first place. And the problem with that piece of legislation that went into the budget was people advocates obviously were saying there's not really guardrails for what you're saying, so we're removing all this stuff, but what if a book happens to mention that someone has two dads, or what if a book happens to mention someone's, I don't know, harness for a horse or something like that? Where does the line draw that we're able to, and then also how are we paying for these libraries to be able to literally move collections of things to the back and then, I don't know, put a curtain up like Blockbuster used to do or something like that?
Oh, remember that curtain? Yeah.
And Susan, on the subject of harnesses for horses, I have a name, okay? So,
I didn't wanna, spill your
oh my God.
New LinkedIn title for Adam Rhodes. Yeah, well, look, and there was no definition in that bill about what LGBTQ plus content was. And we should be fair. Some Republicans here in Ohio have said, and they have the numbers to do it technically if they wanted to override Governor DeWine's veto. They actually have until the end of 2026 to do so. So we still might keep our eyes on libraries moving forward here in Ohio. Adam, then there's gay bars.
Mhm.
I love that I said earlier that gay bars, are not normally a space of drama, which that's not exactly true.
In what universe is that true, Ken?
I meant LGBTQ, anti-LGBTQ plus attacks, but I love this story, and you sent this one to me right away. I think the day it was published, and I'm still obsessed with it. There in Chicago, some major drama with two gay bars with the exact same name.
Yes. Okay. So, for those who do not know, the Eagle as an institution, as a gay bar, there's the San Francisco Eagle, Atlanta Eagle, New York Eagle. It is basically not a chain, but basically a collection of like spiritually linked leather bars in the United States. Some of them have patios, some of them like are attached to restaurants, but like all of them are kind of designed to be a safe space for the fetish leather kink community. Chicago used to have a Chicago Eagle. But I believe it closed. I don't know the exact date. It closed. It no longer has an eagle. To be clear, there are a good number of leather bars in Chicago. I can think of, a handful. But roughly, last fall, literally, I think like one day after the other, two bars basically said that they were opening, and one was the Eagle Chicago, and the other one was the Chicago Eagle.
Oh my.
And so it immediately set off like just the memes on social media were perfect. It was one of those days. It's like I'm so glad like I'm here for this. This is the internet I signed up for. And I tried to talk to the owners of the people who are opening the Chicago Eagle. I was able to talk to the person who wants to open the Eagle Chicago just to get a sense of like, why do you want to open this bar? Why is like now do you think is a good time to open a leather bar? And to be clear, like as much as this is like silly like drama over like, no, I'm the Eagle, no, I'm the Eagle, like these are like important spaces for folks, like especially I think where the world is like politically right now. I think it's really bold, and I think to use stereotypical or like an eye rolly phrase, it's like a little brave to open a leather bar these days, even in Chicago. And I think
Mhm.
it's really cool to see people who are like 10 toes down, like ready to be a space for the kink and fetish community. Especially, like I don't have to tell you the whole like kink at pride discourse. Like, there's like so much that goes into that the kink and fetish community, like face a lot of like pushback and denigration, even from the queer community. And so, as much as it is, again, was kind of just like silly gay bar drama, there was, at the time I wrote the article, was September 2025, there was some potential for like a legal dispute because one bar, the Chicago Eagle had filed a trademark application before the Eagle Chicago. And, in a previous life, I worked for a legal newswire, and I occasionally covered IP disputes. And if you don't know anything, basically it's kind of, with trademarks, it's like a first person gets the trademark kind of deal. And I checked back this morning because I, knowing we were talking about this, I wanted to see what like the latest on this was. And the Eagle Chicago, being the entity that filed the trademark second, was sent a, believe I, notice of suspension of their trademark application because the Chicago Eagle filed theirs sooner.
Oh, there it is.
And basically the notice says like, because this application was submitted sooner and because if we register this trademark, there's a high likelihood of confusion, which is like in IP, like that's a specific thing that like they try to avoid. Like they're not going to register two trademarks that are confusingly similar. Oftentimes the designation or the definition people use. That's not to say the Chicago Eagle has its trademark yet. It's still in the process. They're almost through the process. They filed what is called a statement of use to the Patent and Trademark Office. And basically, within, I think, 2 months of that being filed is when the trademark is actually registered. So they're like almost there. But unfortunately, it looks like the Eagle Chicago will not have its trademark. And, like a bar can't really operate if they can't use its name. So all that to say, poor.
The hawk it
The
is.
hawk.
The
Oh my
hawk it is there. And that's,
god.
we have that here in Cleveland. Let me just say, by the way, an extraordinarily passionate community. I wrote a few months ago a piece about the Cleveland Leather Awareness Weekend, CLAW, keeping their name and moving to Columbus, which kind of defeats the purpose of the C, which stands for Cleveland. And my gosh, did I get some passionate feedback about that piece from folks who had never read anything I have ever written before. So that is a place in journalism I've not explored yet, but far more to go. Far more to go. Well, let's pivot from safe spaces to some important health stories that are out there. Susan, Ohio has once again passed a 24-hour waiting period for abortion care. They did so despite a previous pretty darn clear judicial ruling blocking that very waiting period after Ohio voters have overwhelmingly said, hey, we don't want that. Can you do the thing again, which I think you've definitely done it once, possibly twice. Can you do the thing again where you tell our listeners why this is an LGBTQ plus issue and why we should care?
I was so intrigued as to can you do the thing again?
I had no idea where that was going, really.
I get that a lot.
Can you do the thing where you explain? Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, the long and short of it is abortion care impacts everyone, whether you are Republican, whether you are independent, whether you're Democrats, whether you do not care about politics, whether you do. It is a part of life. And the other thing is the activities of legislators and what the state house is doing from day to day is paid for by taxpayers. So
Mhm.
whether or not you're having an abortion, whether or not you have anything to do with any of that, the tax money that you pay is going towards these legislators that are doing these things and doing legislation possibly over again. Even though, yes, as you said, we've seen this 20, so it's a 24-hour waiting period, which means a person who wants to have an abortion has to see a doctor at least 24 hours before they have said abortion to receive information, state mandated information about the risks, about it's called informed consent. So all of these things that the state says you have to tell this person before they can have an abortion. As advocates put it, with the idea that people that are having abortions have not thought about this and do not know what the risks, and with the assumption that doctors are not already doing that. And, doctors have already said that's part of our training is to give them the risks, how this works, what the procedure is, what happens, how long it takes, recovery, things, complications, all that stuff. And, we're talking a lot in national discourse and also in the state about medication abortion specifically. So that would be where you take mifepristone is the one that's talked about a lot. It's a 2-pill regimen. Take mifepristone and misoprostol, not to get too in the weeds with medical stuff because that's as far in the weeds as I can get about it anyway. But that's talked about a lot about how much access there is to that sort of thing and whether people are getting it disingenuously and whether men are giving it to women without them knowing, which a lot of people have said is something that should be criminal, but not taking away access to abortion because of that. So when you're talking about how this impacts everybody, not only does it impact people from a healthcare standpoint, but it impacts people in that we are talking about litigation that has already gone through the Franklin County courts to say this is unconstitutional because of the amendment that was passed by 57% of the voters in 2023 that said that abortion rights were part of the state constitution, and that additionally, that the state could not pass any legislation that would interfere with that within reason. So, and this is not the first time we've seen this legislation since the constitutional amendment was passed. They've had multiple rounds of Republican-led legislation that has tried to basically undermine what's happening, or the Republicans argue we are not saying that you can't have an abortion. We're just saying you can't do it until you've waited 24 more hours, which involves, getting somewhere to stay for 24 more hours, because access
Right.
does not mean that you live near the place that you are getting this abortion. It means getting transportation. It means getting childcare, because a lot of people that have abortions already have children, and that can play into the reason that they want to have an abortion. So I don't know if that answered your question at all, but there you go.
Despite the fact that you've written about this before,
If
and
you couldn't tell.
right, voters be damned. Adam, at the intersection of art and HIV status is apparently a discrimination complaint. What did you find going down in New York City?
If you don't know, there's the Leslie Lohman Museum of Art, formerly, I believe, the Leslie Lohman Museum of Gay and Lesbian Art. Basically, it was the first LGBTQ plus art museum, or art museum specifically focused on art by LGBTQ plus people in the world. And the like TLDR of it is basically that a co-editor on a book project that involved the Leslie Lohman Museum is accusing basically the person who was leading the project, who happens to be on their board of trustees, discriminating against him based on his HIV status, of making, a number of like discriminatory and derogatory comments about him, saying like he has like an AIDS obsession, or is like a virus like has made him sick in the head or something like that. It is an interesting case because the person accused is a very well-known and well-respected HIV researcher, including like researching the original cocktail. So it is just a really interesting, fascinating, and case that gets to the heart of a lot of what I cover. It is another one of those cases where like there's so many facts to wade through, and it is very much a they said story. But it is our job as journalists, in this moment, to just like, it is an allegation and it's a thing. I'm not telling you who's right. I am telling you that it happened.
This is a thing that is happening. It was a great piece. It was a great piece.
Oh, thank you.
Well, there are some folks out there whose names you might not know, but you soon will. It's one of my favorite games. It's called Who the Heck Is That? Adam, let's start with you. Who the heck was Diana Fuentes? And if you can also speak to her unbelievable support of the LGBTQ plus community.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for giving me some space to talk about this. Diana Fuentes was the executive director at IRE, and very tragically, actually a month ago today, she passed very suddenly on a work trip for IRE in DC. She was my boss, the woman who hired me at IRE in 2022. She was the first person of color to lead the organization. She was a 5 foot nothing Latina who, one of my favorite descriptions, we've like received so much wonderful outpouring of support, like as her staff and, her loved ones. That somebody called her like a bottle of soda all shaken up. Because she just had a personality and a fire in her that like far, out exceeded her stature, again being, 5 foot nothing. And she was so much more than our boss. Like, she was our friend. I loved her so much that she felt like, and as a Latino person on staff, as one of at the time one of 3 Latino people on staff, aside from her, it meant the world to see such a well respected woman of color who like didn't need to like puff out her chest and didn't need to like stand 6 feet tall to take up space, but to be authentic to herself. She was the kindest woman I've ever met. Like, would give the shirt off her back to literally anybody who asked. We would always joke that every time we saw her get out of an Uber, she would know everything about the Uber driver. Like, there's the jokes like she gets out of the Uber and she's like, "I hope your sister has a good surgery. Let me know how like your SAT goes." Go like something like it. Like, she would just like know all of the like most intimate details of these people's lives and like have so much care for them. And when she hired me, I was really coming into my own as an investigative journalist. I had done maybe not as much investigative journalism as like somebody would expect, an IRE trainer to have. I had only really done that for like 2, 3 years. But she saw something in me that has really just made me the journalist I am today. I have a confidence to do the work that I do. And, she greenlit every project that I wanted to work on. And she never told me to, stop being, frankly, the loudmouth queer that I am, not to stop, having strong opinions about how to do this work well and how to do so in a way that like respects queer people, especially amid, the rise of anti-trans like media coverage the past couple years. She was so supportive of that, and I never felt like I had to apologize or, sanitize myself or shrink myself, both, as her employee, but as, like somebody that like this job gave me a platform and she like let me wield it in a way that I felt responsible for. Um, and not to talk too much about her personal life, but that came from a place of very personal, like it was personal to her. And, I didn't learn maybe quite how personal it was until her passing. But it has been such a difficult month, I think, for the IRE staff because of how tremendous she was. I'm working with my colleague Francisco Vararota, who is, like the gay older brother I've always wanted, on a tribute to her for the IRE Journal. Francisco knew her for 23 years. She hired him as an intern when he was 19. Um, and, I'm just so thankful to have known her, and that Francisco is here to help, all of us through it.
Thank you for bringing her into the space. I really wanted to create room for that on this week's episode. I had quite a few Zooms with her over the past year, and it was just a staggering news
Yeah.
but a staggering presence. And I will also quickly move past the fact that apparently I am not the gay older brother you always wanted to have. So we'll talk about that off the air, I guess.
Shut up. I will say, actually, Ken, you were like the first person to text me when the announcement went out. So
Well, pivoting, that's round one of Who the Heck Is That? Let's pivot to round two, wildly pivot. Susan, I went into the Susan Tebben archives for this one because it's one of the places in Ohio that I love saying out loud because people think I'm making it up. Susan, round two, what the heck is Golf Manor and what is the LGBTQ plus significance there?
And I get to be the sports ball. Actually, it has nothing
Yes,
to do with golf.
you do.
I'm sorry, I'm sure there are many of us on here who listen to your podcast that watch the Masters, but this has nothing to do with golf.
I think I watched different Masters than everyone else.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I had
Horse
to.
with a harness. Here we go. Here we go.
So Golf Manor is this was really I'm glad you brought this up because this was one of my favorite stories that I've ever written actually.
Yay.
Not that I love all of my stories equally, of course, but I happened to be just in 2024. The elections were coming up and things like that. I was looking at the LGBTQ plus Victory Institute's just list of LGBTQ elected officials in Ohio. It was not a very long list, so it wasn't hard. And I realized that there kept coming up this village of Gulf Manor and lesbians, bisexuals, all the alphabet city and Gulf Manor are apparently the same place. So just outside of Cincinnati, it's a little village, half square mile of land, a little more than that, 3,800 people, most of which are people of color. And at the beginning of 2024, the village council had Melody Mail, who's a lesbian, and Charlotte Brewer, who's bisexual, and they have an openly gay mayor. They had one in 2015. So, like, it's just this as the Ron Hurth, who's the openly gay mayor, who's now the village administrator, said, it's a microcosm of the United States of LGBTQ elected officials. So Golf Manor just happened to be this place where, the gays apparently went and started saying, hey, we could be leaders here. So they did. So yeah, that's just one of a few places around here that has those kind of things, but not, the ratio isn't quite the same there. And it's a small community, but I mean, being that close to one of the major metropolitans in the state, that says something about, what can be done just, a little bit away is from the major and, what this could mean. And there was a lot of discussion I remember from that interview about how obviously they wanted to make change. They wanted their identity to be a part of it, but they also wanted to make sure that the people knew that they were qualified for these jobs. So it was fascinating to talk to all of them because they were like, some of them were said, like, people were telling them that they should run. They had never thought of doing that. They just thought that they were being advocates for their communities, and their communities being LGBTQ, and their communities being Gulf Manor, communities being Ohio, all that stuff. They were just people who thought the potholes needed to be filled, infrastructure needed to be fixed, money from the state should be going where it should be going. Also, we're gay.
That really got me. I'm sorry. Just also, we're gay. That's never been like the fifth thing I say about myself.
It's number 7 for me. It's number 1 for me, but it's also, I have to tell you, one of the first pieces that I ever wrote for the Buckeye Flame was about Golf Manor, because back in 2020, they had major drama there over a non-discrimination ordinance, and I love talking about this too because it was a big religious community that was opposing the non-discrimination ordinance, and the assumption always is in these conversations, what branch of Christianity is opposing this? No, no, my friends, that would be my fellow Jews, because Golf Manor is the home to the Cincinnati Hebrew Day School and the Golf Manor Synagogue, the oldest surviving Orthodox synagogue in the Cincinnati area. And it was my fellow Jews who were fighting hard against that non-discrimination ordinance. So you have to wonder if that didn't bring some of the gays out of the woodwork to then serve and fix those potholes. And yes, also they're gay. So there you go.
They were called to serve.
Called to serve. And you all are called to serve because you are listening to This News is So Gay. I'm your host, Ken Schneck from the Buckeye Flame. Joining me this week, Adam Rhodes from IRE and Susan Tebben from the Ohio Capital Journal. By the by, if you are not subscribed to This News is So Gay, what the heck are you waiting for? Subscribe to This News is So Gay right this very second on your favorite podcasting app so that new episodes automatically make their way to you. Well, it is time, folks. It is time for Glitter Bomb. This is where our LGBTQ plus roundtable shares stories of queer joy that they are seeing covered there in the news. So let's set off a glitter bomb. Adam, give us a quick queer joy story that you are seeing out there in the world.
Honestly, I'm just gonna do a little shameless self promo. My glitter bomb is the giant back tattoo that I'm getting in a couple weeks. If you know anything about me, I love to get tattoos. I've been looking forward to this tattoo forever. Unfortunately, it is on my mom's birthday. When I told her, she did say it ruined her day. That's different. But yeah, my queer joy is something about me, shocking absolutely no one.
Is it gonna be your mom?
I was just going to ask if she's going to be fine with it because it's a back tattoo of your mom.
That would be so frightening. There's so many different things I could say about this. It's a biblically accurate seraphim, so it's like a bunch of wings and eyes on my back, done in like an American traditional style. I'm very excited. My mom is not. I showed her to the design. She said it was creepy. We're fine.
There you go.
We'll need an update after about how painful that was.
Yes.
The back is supposed to be very easy, actually.
That was
Stay
not my
tuned.
experience. Okay, Susan Tevin set off a glitter bomb. Give us a story of queer joy.
So I heard on NPR, if you're all supporting your local NPR stations, I am sure, story about a little site along the Russian River in California that was like, it's historic in terms of LGBTQ gatherings and things. It sort of reminded me of like Woodstock of its day, but for the gays. So I guess what's happening now, as if anybody has heard, climate change is a thing. I've heard. And this
Allegedly.
this area around the Russian River in Sonoma County is being impacted by climate change. So that means this historic area where like hippies and artists and sunbathers and all of the LGBTQ creatives would meet is in danger. So there's two groups, the Shelterwood Collective and the Solar Punk Farms, which is the greatest name for a farm I have ever heard.
Love.
They're actively calling queer people back to the land. I'm reading this straight from WQED or KQED, excuse me. Not only like they are still having gatherings and they still party out on the land, but they're also restoring the forest with stuff like controlled burns and advocating for environmental policy and things like that. So like there are gay advocates out there that are trying to save this historic area of California that was historically for LGBT people to meet up and have their good old times. Apparently they have a big Halloween thing over there. So I heard that on the way going somewhere and I thought it's just how queer joy just intersperses with climate change, et cetera, et cetera. So I kind of loved it.
Love it. Absolutely love it. And finally, our collective gay hearts broke with the news that, soccer star Megan and WNBA legend Sue have split up. So let's refocus on happier gay relationships. My friends, for this week's quick queer culture question, who is your favorite LGBTQ plus couple slash thruple slash polycule? Mom, if you're listening, I'll explain that last one in a few. Adam, your favorite LGBTQ plus relationship.
I think my favorite LGBTQ plus relationship has to be Jodie Foster and her wife.
Love it. I did not see that one coming. Susan Tebben, your favorite one.
Take that. I contain multitudes.
You did not specify that this had to be a real couple, and for anyone that is a fan, then it is real anyway. So, Ilya and Shane Hollander.
I could have said heated rivalry. God, I'm leaving.
Come on now.
I would have said Scott and Kip, though.
So they will always and forever be one of my favorites because they're amazing. If you want a real one, Sarah Paulson and Holland Taylor always.
Oh, that's a great one, too. I do want to remind everyone that the correct answer was the Chicago Eagle and the Chicago Hawk. That is my favorite LGBTQ couple. We certainly want to hear what you all are working on. Adam, what is coming up from you?
I can't talk too much about it, but one that is maybe more closely aligned with my Eagle versus Eagle story, and then another that is kind of part and parcel with my other coverage.
And I must highlight, by the way, our first shared byline, Adam Rhodes and Ken Schneck.
Yes.
Writing about a new proposed bill here in Ohio that would segregate inmates based on, you can't see me doing air quotes, biological sex. And, we'll see if that bill goes anywhere. And when this bill came up, my first thought was, well, Adam knows everything about this. I'm reaching out to Adam. And we got that piece done in like a day, which was awesome. Susan Tebben, what's coming up for you?
Can't say the same, but I am working on a byline or a thing with you that is not happening in a day about first-time testimony at the State House and how you can reach your legislators and all that stuff. When you said that, Adam said that thing about I can't talk about it. I was like, is it a cease and desist for Ken? I wasn't sure.
Nope, we're totally good.
We're fine. On the record, we're fine.
Otherwise, May primaries are coming up. Voting is important, so I'm working on election stuff because we've got that coming up and lots of things in Ohio that are being voted on. And also, I'm working on a story about SNAP benefits and how there's been some federal level decisions to ban like sugary drinks and things. And in Ohio, they did actually ask for the federal government to do that. And the federal government said sure. So now there's a lawsuit, not specifically related to Ohio right now, but there is a lawsuit from a couple of different states asking for that not to be the case. The sugary drink ban specifically. So I'm working on getting together why that's important, what that means, what's happening in Ohio, that kind of thing.
Amazing stuff. And yes, as Susan mentioned, we're working on a piece together. And I was just saying this I actually was just saying it to my mom on the drive over to the studio. And I said it to Gray, producer Gray as well. It's one of the most amazing things and a byproduct of hosting this show that I never saw coming was that not only do I get to know you all and repeatedly interact with you, but it's now resulting in us working on pieces together that never would have happened if not for this News is So Gay, which I will say here for the first time, I could have put this at the top of the show. I'll say it next week at the top of the show, was just funded for season number 2. So we will be coming back at you for a whole nother season. I appreciate you both so much. Shout out to Lauren Chapman, but Adam Rhodes, thank you for everything you're doing.
Of course, thank you.
And Susan Tebben, my tour guide, I appreciate you enormously.
Literally the least I could do. You're welcome.
How does that feel? You got the least. No.
Well, it wasn't the least when I mangled getting into the State House and some mishaps there, and Susan saw me through that. So I'm appreciative to both of you, and of course to little Hibachi.
Oh my God, she's being such a jerk.
I'm Ken Schneck, editor of the Buckeye Flame, and if you liked this episode of This News is So Gay, please share it with a friend. Subscribe so that you do not miss out on our next next episode. Send an email on over to editor@thebuckeyeflame.com. That's me, to let us know your thoughts. I respond to every single email, and rate and review us on your favorite podcasting app. This News is So Gay is a product of the Buckeye Flame, a nonprofit newsroom. Become a recurring donor today for as little as $12.50 a month, which truly enables programming like this from a scrappy queer newsroom like the Buckeye Flame. In the meantime, read LGBTQ plus news, share the stories from LGBTQ plus reporters, and support the work of LGBTQ plus newsrooms. Until next week, friends.